was at over in France for the Cannes Film Festival and sat down with Yahoo Finance and did an interview that got a bunch of attention. So here is Tony Khan talking about AEW's performance on cable since streaming on Max at the beginning of the year.
Feels like 2025 is in a lot of ways the best year we've had. I mean, we're having a great.
Well, how big is the business? How many sales do you bring in? I mean, is it making money? Like, what do you?
Yeah,
what's the
we're
business
doing
like?
fantastic. This was a huge year for us. We grew the business so much with the simulcast.
Gotcha.
We brought in new audience with Max and streaming, but also we've been able to grow our cable audience year over year. Frankly, that cable and satellite and
Growth in
streaming,
cable. Who's doing that?
Well, honestly, us, because a lot of people thought when you start simulcasting AEW on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights, oh, okay, well, a lot of people, they're still going to watch the show, but people are going to migrate to streaming. Well, actually, our cable audience, when we started simulcasting, went up, and we have a great audience on Max streaming every week, too. So we have been able to do that, and we've really maintained and grown a great audience over the years. AEW, we say it's where the best wrestle, and I really believe that's true. I think we have the best roster of wrestlers in the world.
That was Tony Khan talking about AEW's performance on cable, up year over year. Question mark. Well,
Is that true?
You tell us, Brandon. He said year over year.
Year over year. What does that mean? We can parse that in a moment. So Dynamite is down year over year in total viewership by about 20%. This is from a week ago, but 1 week isn't going to change it greatly. The demo. What about the demo? The demo is down like 37%. But what about Collision? Yeah, Collision's down about 26%. What about Collision? That was in the demo. What about total viewership? It's down 17%. So there's really no way that what he's saying could be true. Now it's true that in the end of Q4, right when the simulcast started, viewership didn't immediately decline. There's no evidence that there was this big cannibalization effect that resulted from people having the option to watch on Max, that they moved from TBS or TNT to watch it on Max. There's no evidence of that suggests there was at least immediate cannibalization. But to say it's up year over year, unless you have some definition of year over year that the Merriam-Webster dictionary does not agree with, then it's not true that cable viewership is up. Now, is with the addition of Max viewership, is viewership up if you include that? Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, we don't have any data on that, and I question if he's got data on that.
I think that's, I like the Max streaming viewership. Obviously, that's a major caveat to all of this. In terms, if you are just looking at present performance for AEW for the year, if we're looking at, as we're coming up to halfway through 2025, is AEW, what is their performance relative to the fourth quarter of last year when it did feel like this was a bottoming out period for AEW from a lot of different factors.
Yes. And so I was doing some research to look at, I think what people, especially AEW fans, probably want to talk about is and would you say from watching the show that since the new year, the product feels different significantly?
Yes.
Compared to 2024?
Yeah. Yes, I would.
Yeah. And if you're a big AEW fan, you might want to say, well, I feel that way too. And that has to be resulting in the increase of popularity across the brand and across all the metrics. We've kind of talked about this in earlier weeks, so I decided let's really take a look at it. And I looked at, let's look at the rank. That's the thing that compares Dynamite to the performance of TV generally. And we do see this rank. I've got this broken out by weekly ranking for Dynamite and P1849, which is data that we get from Programming Insider. And we do see in the second half of in like Q2 or so, it is climbing. And if we look at just the straightforward viewership, we do see since the end of the year, it's climbing a little bit despite Max viewership. Is it up year over year? No, because as you can see back in 2024, it was much higher throughout the year. Is it at the level it was at in 2023? Certainly not. But it does seem to be climbing. Now, what about attendance that is not affected by all these new forms of media? And attendance and we're not even including the Arena Mexico attendance, whatever that was, whether it's 14,000, whatever it was. Dynamite attendance in most of this new year and through the present, this is a mathematical upward slope that I could draw here. And this is not just one metric. It's not just one splicing of data, but this is across TV and attendance in different ways of looking at it. That's a preponderance. That's at least three things. And that is moving in the right direction. Boom period, no. As popular as it was a year ago, probably not. But moving in the right direction, which is not something you could say until roughly now.
And something that was hard to fathom as 2024 was coming to an end, and it just felt as though both companies were going in opposite directions, and it seems as though, WWE has certainly not curtailed, at least attendance-wise. We can look at other factors like Netflix, for instance, but overall, it does feel as though there is a lot more momentum on AEW's side, but I think that has to be tempered. We are not talking about them turning the clock back to 2022 or, as you said, even a year ago.
Yes. And let's be fair to Tony Khan. He may not know what his ratings are year over year, but, as the year was ending last year, I think it was, I was saying, I think somebody else should be in charge of creative, because I just don't know of any moment in history where the same person in charge of creative has overseen a decline in popularity metrics like we're seeing here, and then been able to turn it around. And this is not recovered, but moving in the right direction.
All right. We are going to, everybody, appreciate the time with him very much. Before we wrap up, was there any more of the AEW popularity that you wanted to discuss? We kind of went over some of the graphs and such, but just putting a bow on that. I mean, there is it has gone beyond just simply the reception that a lot of these shows have been getting, and maybe hitting a peak with last week's Grand Slam Mexico show that was very, very well received. And you are seeing small increments as they build up towards this all-in show next month.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing I can add is we can talk about why, but just to reset, TV viewership is up slightly, and remember that's while there's another option about how to watch this. The ranking has been traveling upward, and the attendance for Dynamites. Now, I didn't unpack Collision. Collision's been more complicated. Collision is not taped every week in its own taping. It's been preempted all over the place. So we're focusing only on Dynamite here, which is their flagship TV. But it's taped every week, and we see attendance climbing. We see viewership up a little bit, and we see the ranking climbing in recent weeks. And people watching in video can see the whole 2-year timeline or so that's looking back on this. It doesn't look like this is a seasonal thing. I guess we talk about why though. Like I've made the argument a number of times that WWE's increases in popularity, which I believe I have shown happened from 2014 to about 2016, that coincides with pay-per-views being available to a much larger audience than they were ever available to before. WWE's popularity decline leveling off around 2021 coincides with the timing of those same pay-per-views, that same type of content being available to an even wider audience when we moved to Peacock. So I guess what I'm suggesting here is you've taken your flagship TV shows and you've made them available not to a much wider audience in Max, but it's going from like 65 million homes to like, I would venture to guess 75, 80 million homes maybe.
If you were, I know this is probably a rarity, if at all, if you were to sit down and watch Dynamite, are you watching it on television or on Max?
I would watch it through YouTube TV. So yes, plain old television would fall into that category. Yeah.
While we're on the topic of HBO Max, I'm kind of just forcing this in there. A big recommendation I would give people is that new documentary